Hey there, welcome to episode 117 of the Social Business Engine podcast, the podcast where I invite thought leaders from all industries to share their expertise on social and digital communications best practices. I'm Bernie Borges from Find and Convert and your host of the Social Business Engine podcast. On this episode, you are going to meet Amisha Gandhi, Senior Director, Influencer Marketing at SAP. Amisha will explain SAP's influencer marketing strategy and the impact that it's having on their business. Now, this episode is sponsored by Outward Media Inc., a leader in the direct marketing industry. Later in the show, I'm going to tell you about a valuable offer from Outward Media. And now, here's my interview with Amisha Gandhi, Senior Director, Influencer Marketing at SAP. Amisha, welcome to the Social Business Engine podcast.
Thanks, Bernie, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Terrific. Well, Amisha, let's get right to it. You head up influencer marketing at SAP, a global leader in enterprise software solutions. So where I'd like to begin our conversation is just kind of a brief overview of your approach to influencer marketing at SAP.
Sure. So the way we approach influencer marketing at SAP is really all about, working with third-party influencers. And these are folks outside the traditional analyst relation PR function at most companies. So these are independent business consultants, academics, authors, people who have an influence over a certain audience. And we're looking for those folks to engage them in content and programming that really target our, a demand gen sales cycle versus an awareness sales cycle, which is what, when you look at influencer relations or PR or AR is, more involved in.
Okay, it's interesting you said that it's demand gen focused. So maybe you can elaborate on that element of your influencer marketing strategy. How do you actually tie it to demand generation?
So when you're looking at co-creating content with influencers or having them come to events, we're looking at, creating content that really targets our customers or potential customers with, really good thought leadership with people that we're already engaged with. And these are influencers that really speak to that audience. So You're talking about, like a CIO audience or IT audience, a CFO audience, a HR audience. So really by function across, these audiences, there's very specific voices, and they can help tell your story in a credible fashion, or they can add, what they do is they add thought leadership, and your experts at the company can add the product value in. And so that layering together can create some really nice pieces in your marketing campaign for field. So you're, really working and creating content for field marketing, for, marketing assets that are in your actual campaigns. Okay,
terrific. So how do you do this? You've got so many different lines of business at SAP. Again, you're a global enterprise solutions provider. So how do you do this across the different lines of business?
So, the biggest thing is identifying the right influencers for each line of business. And there are different tools out there that you can use to identify influencers. But really, when you're thinking about it, you need to think about, what are your top lines of business? So that's, we have our, top ones. And we work with those teams and those campaign teams to really help them, create some good influencer marketing campaigns. And we help them, depending on what their campaign is, here's how this, here's an influencer marketing program that will work for this campaign for this specific LOB.
Okay, and what are some of those lines of business that you span?
Sure. So we some of the lines of business, I'll just mention just a few, is IT, HR, supply chain, finance services, and so those are just a few that we work with.
Okay. Well, that covers quite a bit, actually. Okay. So, Amisha, I know that you recently, at the time of this recording, you have recently completed or come off this big event that SAP puts on every year, your user conference called Sapphire. So maybe you can first explain for those listeners that may not be familiar with Sapphire, like what it is, because I know it's a big event. And then also, like, how did you engage with influencers at this event? And specifically, I'd love to know, and I know my listeners would love to know, how you used live video to engage with influencers. So starting with, what is Sapphire, and how did you use live video to engage with influencers at Sapphire?
Sure. So Sapphire for SAP is our largest customer-facing event and user conference for the year. And it's always typically in Orlando, in May timeframe, and it brings together customers, partners, user groups, namely ASUG, which is the big one, user group in North America, and it brings all these folks together to really share best practices and things like that. But this is also where SAP announces major product changes and strategic direction every year as well. So it's something that people really look forward to. And then with our influencers this year, with influencer marketing, added a new dimension because we did some live interviews to help extend our event outside of folks just attending, because we have 20,000 plus people on site or more. This extends the event to a much larger audience of 80,000 plus. So it really, we wanted to really tap into that virtual audience and, kind of give them another, flavor of Sapphire through the eyes of the influencers. And then with the influencers, we also did some recorded interviews with some of our customers that we can then use in our marketing campaigns, which then brings us back to, generating campaign content and offers for our campaigns. And then we also did some, set up some really good strategic meetings based on what our influencers were interested in, at SAP by topic or by product area. A lot of people do live streaming on Periscope and Blab and other tools. We chose to use Facebook, the Facebook platform, and we did these live interviews, and it was really great for two reasons. If anyone wants to walk away, I think the two things were, one is, it was on our Facebook Live pages. So these people have, the audience is already predetermined that they're interested in this topic. And so we had different topical pages, if you will, for different, whether it was HANA or finance or HR, and there were already followings of those pages. So when we're promoting it to an outside audience, and we're drawing those people in, but we're also drawing and promoting to the folks already following on Facebook, which is a pretty good audience. Mm-hmm. So you are kind of getting good content out to people already interested, and through promotion, you're also getting some stuff. And then the second thing is, it really helps you extend the event out to folks that aren't able to maybe attend the event. And then after the event is over, you can have that video on your Facebook page, and you can use the link to embed it into blog posts. You can use it to embed it into field communication. So there's a lot more use that comes, before the event promoting, but during and definitely after. And the thing about working with influencers for the live videos is, they will help you promote and help bring maybe a different audience that's already following you. So there's value in that, and then the big value is their thought leadership that they bring to the interviews and their knowledge and their expertise, and that can make your videos much more and extend, outside of just a product or something. It gets into more of a trend and can become very interesting, video for people they'll really want to watch it.
Okay, so I'm curious, when you were shooting the live video, because the live video on something like Facebook Live is done from a mobile device, right? So in addition to the online audience, were you also doing this in sort of a physical setting where you were attracting an audience there on the spot as well, or was it strictly just for the online audience?
It was more really directed to the online audience.
Okay.
And we worked with, our influencer marketing sits in audience marketing at SAP, and that's where a lot of our campaigns and we also have now marketing. So it's audience marketing and partner marketing together. And so that's the group we sit in. And we partnered with the SME team. So I know you are familiar with Ursula Ringham here at SAP. And so we partnered with her, and she was bringing in her, influencer for SME, and I had all these different influencers across LOB. So we brought them together, and we participated in their program. And so it was these live videos, and it was really, you can make it look really professional with a backdrop. We had mics, actual mics, and a little bit of an audio system, which is, very mobile, so it's not a lot of setup at a table with mics, and then it is off a mobile device. Making sure you have a stable Wi-Fi connection, can be a little bit challenging, so you want to try to see if you can, be in the best spot. But you do need a little bit of a dedicated, table or some space. And, you also want to show a little bit of the event, so if you can make it so that you could see in our videos and you could see some of the event going on in the background, that adds to the energy of the video as well.
Right. Okay, terrific. Yeah, I can kind of picture it in my head. Terrific. Okay. All right, Amisha, I want to segue to have some conversation around the relationships that you're building with influencers. But before we go to that, I just want to break for a message from our sponsor. Outward Media, Inc. is a leader in the direct marketing industry, providing businesses access to the largest SMB email database for the acquisition of new customers. OMI has a commitment to data accuracy that I find very impressive because it helps you identify your best prospects so that you can generate more qualified leads. In fact, OMI offers a 95% accuracy guarantee on all email data for 30 days. I urge you to download OMI's ebook, The Executive's 15-Minute Guide to Building a Successful Email Marketing Database, to discover the essentials for improving email deliverability. Now, when I read this ebook, I discovered at least 3 things that we needed to address. It's really a must-read for all digital marketers. You can get your copy now at outwardmedia.com/SBE, and you can also find the link to this ebook at our website at socialbusinessengine.com. So, Amisha, let's begin this topic with, how do you actually identify influencers? You work on a global scale. So how do you identify the influencers that you want to engage with?
So, I mentioned, a bit ago that, there are tools out there to help you identify. There are lists that you can look up and see some top influencers and things like that. And that is helpful to get you started. But, if you can use a tool like a tracker, for example, that really helps you identify not just global influencers, but really get down into influencers by a trending topic that you're really interested in, whether it's, Internet of Things or mobile or something like that. Or it can be, anyone that's really talking about CIOs. It can really help you hone down and find influencers, not just at a global level, but you can search for people by country or city level, so then you can get to local influencers as well. And for companies like an SAP, it's important to reach out on a global level, but it's also important for a lot of folks, to have local and regional folks that they can work with as well. Sure.
And are you always looking for influencers, or do you just kind of get to a point where you've got your universe of influencers and you kind of stay with them for a year or a period of time, or is it an ongoing activity of looking for influencers?
So it's interesting you mention this. So I always view in a relationship with an influencer, it's really a two-way street. So
Sure.
When you establish a relationship, and each influencer is different because they might have a different business model, or they're a thought leader for a partner company. So depending on who they are and what they're seeking to do and what you're seeking to do, you kind of find a good space that's something that works for both of you, and it's a benefit to both parties. But I always look at that as a long-term relationship. And so, I'm always looking and talking to folks and influencers because people are changing topics, technology is changing. So it's always good to talk to new people. And then we have, folks that, I really strive to have those long-term relationships. I think they're trying to establish in a certain space, just as most companies are, or moving if technology is changing and moving, everyone's kind of evolving together.
Sure. Okay. And I love your comment about how it's a two-way relationship. And I know one of the things that influencers really appreciate is having access to things like, executives and product managers and specific content and that kind of thing. So is that part of your plan as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's really important to, the influencers that work with you should be, educated on what you are doing, and then they can also offer you feedback based on what they're hearing from you, which is a very valuable relationship both ways. And then, with some influencers, we do paid opportunities, right? Because it is, having somebody come speak and put together a specific speech or keynote. So they'll come and do that, and we'll work with them on that. So, keeping everybody informed is really also important so they know what's going on. But I also ask them, not just, the news of the day, here's our big news. I mean, that's really not as much, of importance as it is for influencer marketing. They're really looking at, what is it that you're actually doing in your space? Why should people know about it? Why do you want people to know about it? And what are the stories that are important to them? So if somebody's covering IoT, I always ask, well, you cover IoT, but what is your angle? What is something that you are really passionate about in this area? Because that helps me figure out who the right person at the company that I'm working for is the right fit for that person to be engaged with us and for them to get value out of that conversation.
Okay, terrific. Do you also, when you bring influencers together like that, do you ever run like think tank kind of activities, workshops, or what have you, where you bring them together and maybe run through sort of a half day, full day, whatever it might be, 1 hour, 2 hour sessions with them where you're able to, get them to ideate and maybe give you some feedback on strategy?
We haven't had half day sessions at SAP, but I've done that in the past where I brought influencers in for a client, and then we spend a half day kind of getting information, and the other half getting feedback. And we were able to do some of this at Sapphire, which was really great because we had some meetings with some of our top executives and marketing execs, and they were able to spend, for example, they spent almost an hour with Penny Valencia. She's the head of audience and partner marketing at SAP, and they gave her really great feedback on what was resonating with them at the show, what wasn't, what has resonated in the past with them, where they see some gaps going forward. And I think that was a really valuable and good conversation for us to hear all of their feedback, because that can help us, going forward and where we think we're communicating well, what are some things that we could be either doing better or maybe some things that we haven't thought of. They actually are really great. They bring a lot of really great ideas to the table as well.
Okay, excellent. And so let's say that there's an influencer in your world, Amisha, that's listening to this podcast. How would they actually get on your radar? So let's say, you haven't reached out to them, but now you're on their radar. How do they actually get on your radar?
On Twitter, at Amisha Gandhi. So if they're interested, they can reach out to me that way, or on email, amishagandhi@sap.com. I'm always open to people reaching out to me, and then I can see, what are our needs at the time, and maybe it's not a good fit now, but I'm always willing to have that conversation, because I think the more people you talk to that have like-minded interests, the better programs you're going to actually end up creating for your company and also, just externally.
Mm-hmm. Okay, terrific. Okay, Amisha, we are at the point in the podcast where I am going to review with you my recap of our conversation, kind of the highlights, and then I'll ask you to fill in any holes or any gaps and elaborate on anything that you'd like to. So we began the conversation with a discussion of your approach to influencer marketing, and that you really focus on working with third-party independent individuals who are authors and speakers, and they're generally influential over a specific audience. And you have a strategy that's focused on demand generation, that your whole influencer marketing strategy is about creating content with them, empowering them to create content that reaches your both current customers and potential customers, and that they have their own voice, and that they're adding thought leadership to specific topics that, again, complement your internal marketing efforts. The approach is a line of business approach where you've got influencers across different lines of business, spanning LOBs like IT, HR, supply chain, and finance. Now, we talked about Sapphire, your big annual user conference that's held every May in Orlando, Florida. You get about 20,000 attendees, physical attendees that are customers, partners, users, but you also get 80 to 100,000 additional people that are watching online. That's incredible. And then at Sapphire, what you did with the influencers is you did a lot of Facebook Live video. I think that's so awesome. You said you partnered with the SMB team headed up by Ursula Ringham, and that you recorded some interviews with customers and partners and held some meetings with key executives. And that content that you created at Sapphire is put out through the different Facebook pages, and each of those Facebook pages have a following, but you're also promoting that content to other audiences, and it basically allows you to extend the reach beyond those audiences. And then you can take that video content, you can repurpose it into blog content and other formats, and then of course the influencers are doing the same and repurposing the content, their own content. We talked about also how you identify influencers. You mentioned that you use Tracker, which is an influencer management program that allows you to identify influencers by a variety of different things, topics, geography, audience. And once you identify them, then you can put your outreach and communication program in place. But and I love this, Amisha, that you really are focused on building long-term relationships with influencers, that it's really a relationship. It's a two-way street. You're giving them access to executives and content, but then they can also provide, feedback to SAP on strategic initiatives. You mentioned that some of their engagements, might be paid engagements if, for example, they're doing a keynote or something like that. And you also said that, the influencers are strategic to you. And I kind of got the impression that you really treat them as like clients. So let me just end my recap right there and ask you to respond. And if there's anything that you'd like to elaborate on.
No, I think that you mentioned a lot of the things, and you hit the nail on the head when you said, I treat the influencers like clients, because I think it's important that there should be business value to both parties, and that's what really creates really great relationships, and in the end, really creates people who are going to want to engage with you time and time again. You're going to want to engage with them, and you're going to get both parties are going to get the best results out of that engagement and relationship. The other thing that influencers do that can really help folks, and why influencer marketing I think is really an important discipline to bring in, is really also the amplification effect you get from your influencers, not just on social media, but on all the different channels where your audience sits. They can come to your events and participate. They can be listeners. They can give you feedback. They can participate and be participants of your events. They can be a draw for folks coming in, because they are influential and they have something important and valuable to say to your audience. So they can be a draw in and of themselves. So I think it all goes back to that business value. Something that everyone should think about is when you do an influencer marketing program, think about the measurements. So the tool Tracker I mentioned also does the measurement, so that's also something to keep in mind. And then, we look at, and I know a lot of, folks are probably listening, they maybe, work at a different size company and they don't have a lot of line of businesses. Maybe they are just in a line of business, but they have different industries they impact. So they can think of maybe, doing something in an industry-specific way, because there are industry-specific influencers out there to engage with as well.
Excellent point. Thank you for that. Okay, Amisha, where would you like to send people online to connect with you and learn more about the SAP Influencer Marketing Program?
So everyone can come and visit us at sap.com and look for underneath the marketing tab and find us. I'm on Twitter, and you can find me there at Amisha Gandhi as well to engage.
Terrific. Well, Amisha, my listeners know that we'll have that linked up in our show notes page. Thank you so much for sharing your insights on your influencer marketing strategy at SAP. I really appreciate your time today.
Sure. Happy to be here.
All right. Well, I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Amisha Gandhi, Senior Director, Influencer Marketing at SAP. This episode was sponsored by Outward Media, Inc., a leader in the direct marketing industry. download OMI's ebook, The Executive's 15-Minute Guide to Building a Successful Email Marketing Database, to discover the essentials, and I mean the essentials, for improving email deliverability. You can get your copy now at outwardmedia.com/SBE. And you'll also find this link on the show notes page for this episode at our website at socialbusinessengine.com. Hey, before I close out this episode, I want to invite you to become a member of our Social Business Engine community. Membership is totally free and it provides premium content that we only make available to members. Our community is made up of thousands of business professionals whose common interest is using social media strategy, social technology, and social culture to create better business results and to improve their career. It's easy to become a member, and remember, it's free. Just visit our website at socialbusinessengine.com. Well, that's going to do it for episode 117. I want to thank my guest once again, Amisha Gandhi, Senior Director, Influencer Marketing at SAP. This is Bernie Borges of Find and Convert, wishing you continued success on your social business journey.